I want to say hello to participants from all over Texas, all over Georgia, a new doctor in Texas. Congratulations. Jackson State University, Indiana. We see you. We know you are here, and we're glad about it. Not long ago, we were highlighted here in Mississippi as one of the least vaccinated states. Where are we now? How are we doing with that? Our next topic is a vaccine update. How are we faring? Coming to us is Lisa Coen, Esquire. Lisa is the U.S. Public Affairs lead for Pfizer vaccines. She has over 25 years of global legal, government relations, policy, public affairs, and communications expertise in both the public and private sectors. Currently, she is the U.S. Public Affairs lead for Pfizer, supporting the U.S. commercial team of government affairs and policy priorities. Prior to joining Pfizer, Lisa was at Bayer Crop Science, where she served as vice president and head of global public and government affairs, focused on building the function and helping to ensure the company was an effective partner with public and private sector stakeholders to support a safe, sustainable global food supply. That's a mouthful. Lisa is an attorney by education and training and received her master's degree in public relations and communications from Georgetown University in 2006. Please welcome Lisa Coen, Esquire.
Evelyn, thank you so much. That was such a nice welcome. And I'm so inspired to be following Dr. Harris. What a great presentation. Good morning, everyone. It's so grateful to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. So as Evelyn said, I'm Lisa Coen. I lead Pfizer's public affairs for vaccines. So safe to say this has been a really busy year. But what I wanted to do is touch on the Pfizer Beyondtech COVID-19 vaccine program and our distribution efforts. And then towards the end, I would really like to review the importance of building vaccine confidence in a wide range of communities across the country and tell you a little bit about what we've been doing. So before I begin, I have to read just a short statement about our vaccine. So the Pfizer Beyondtech COVID-19 vaccine has not been approved or licensed by the FDA, but it's authorized for emergency use under an emergency use authorization to prevent COVID-19 for use in individuals 12 years of age and older. The emergency use of this product is only authorized for the duration of the declaration that circumstances exist justifying the authorization of emergency use of the vaccine, unless the declaration is terminated or authorization revoked sooner. I'd also like to encourage you to review our EUA fact sheet, which is available at www.cvdvaccine-us.com. So let me tell you a little bit about the vaccine. It's mRNA-based, and I know you've heard that. It encodes an optimized SARS-CoV-2 full-length spike protein, which is a key neutralization antigen. But let me break that down just a little bit. The mRNA vaccines work differently from common vaccines. Significantly, mRNA vaccines do not contain any virus particles. Instead, they provide a recipe that teaches our cells to make a part of the COVID-19 virus that's called the spike protein. The idea is stop the spike protein and you can stop infection. So here's what happens. You get a shot of the vaccine in your arm, the vaccine gets into your cells, and it teaches your cells how to make a version of the spike protein, which is released into your bloodstream. Your immune system, so the part of your body that helps protect you from disease, recognizes the spike protein as foreign and creates a response that we believe enables your body to remember this spike protein. The expectation is if you're exposed to the actual COVID-19 spike protein in the future, your immune system will remember the spike protein that your body made after vaccination and take steps to protect you from developing COVID-19. A few key things to underscore. Our vaccine is a 2-dose vaccine administered 3 weeks apart. It's not interchangeable with any other vaccine. It doesn't contain live virus, and the mRNA does not alter your DNA, but is transient and it's eliminated from your body. The vaccine is also preservative-free. If you're interested in the components of the vaccine, you can find that information again in our EUA fact sheet at cvdvaccine-us.com. So I'd like to touch on just a little bit of how we've reached this point by reviewing some milestones in our process. So just over a year ago, if you can believe that, in May 2020, we had just begun the phase 1/2 trial of 4 potential vaccine candidates. By late July 2020, we selected 1 candidate and began the phase 2/3 trial, eventually enrolling over 46,000 participants. We've conducted the trials in about 153 sites across the world in 6 countries and in 39 states in the US. Our trial participants are ages 12 to 85, and in the US, 30% have racially and ethnically diverse backgrounds. About 40% are 56 and older. Of the 30% with diverse backgrounds in our clinical trial, 13% are Hispanic, 10% Black, 6% Asian, and 1.3% Native American. Late last year, in December, the FDA granted emergency use authorization for our vaccine. That was the first in our country for a COVID vaccine. The day after that, the ACIP, which is a part of the Centers for Disease Control, they recommended the vaccine for persons 16 years of age and older under the terms of the EUA. A day later, so in December 13th, we began the first shipments of our COVID vaccine. On May 12th this year, the FDA granted EUA for 12 to 15-year-olds to be able to receive the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. So I want to pause for a minute and just let you know that the approach we've taken in bringing the vaccine to this point on an advanced timeline is not one that cut any corners. Our team ensured that the science drove the process and that we can meet the FDA's rigorous regulatory standards. The clinical trial has been a continuous study with regular discussions with the FDA and other regulatory authorities along the way. This has allowed decisions to be made in near real time. But what's next? So we've submitted our full license application to the FDA. We expect to hear more within the next couple of months about the FDA's review process for that application. This is a very important, rigorous FDA review process, and we hope this will continue to help build confidence in COVID-19 vaccination. We've also started a clinical trial of our COVID-19 vaccine in pregnant women and clinical trials in children 11 years of age down to 6 months in age. We expect those readouts a little bit later this year, and then we would work with the FDA and the CDC to include these results in our EUA and ultimately in our full license application. One of the things I know people have heard about in the news is that there are different variant strains to COVID. So what we've been doing is studying both in the lab and in real world data, how does our vaccine work? And this has included studies around the UK variant, South African, Brazilian, and Indian strains. They now call those from Alpha to Delta variants. And the results using our current vaccine are very encouraging. So what we've done is we've now gone forward with studies around a 3rd dose of that vaccine. We started that study, so it would essentially be a booster dose. We started that in February, expect that to read out sometime this summer. And then we also looked at a 2nd study, and that would be something that's more variant specific. And this is to be able to show that the platform that this vaccine, which is highly effective, could also work if it needed to be adjusted depending on what types of variants are coming into the US and are more predominant. So what we'll do as these read out over the summer is we'll stay in close touch with the FDA, with the CDC, and then we'll see what their plan is with respect to requiring additional doses of vaccine. So let me switch gears a little bit and talk to you about manufacturing and supply. One of the things that we did at the same time that we were working on clinical trials in 2020 is we started this work to also boost our manufacturing capabilities. So that's unusual in our business, to make that type of at-risk investment before knowing if the vaccine would be successful. But of course, because of the urgency of the pandemic, our leadership made that decision early on. So ultimately, starting last July and then going through February 2021, we made 3 agreements with the US government to supply up to 300 million doses of our vaccine, so that could vaccinate 150 million people. We're on track with that process of being able to provide all of those doses by July, should the US need them. And then worldwide, we now believe that we can deliver about 2.5 to 3 billion doses by the end of this year, and then up to 4 billion doses in 2022. As of this week, we've delivered over 206 million doses of the Pfizer Beyondtech COVID-19 vaccine across the US. Our shipment accuracy rate is over 99%. The doses are ordered by the states, by pharmacies, by mass vaccination sites, dialysis centers, and many other federal and state vaccination partners. And this is so that it can get to people in all circumstances, urban, rural, harder to reach communities. So given our manufacturing process improvements, we've also been able to expand our doses available per week in the US to about 15 million. This will allow us to remain on schedule to make all these doses available to the US by mid-July. As you all know, all states have now updated their guidelines to allow individuals 12 and over to be vaccinated against COVID, and the US government has continued to confirm that the vaccine is free in our country. As of this week, CDC reports that over 55% of Americans 18 and older are fully vaccinated. Such a great thing to see. And over 65% have received at least 1 dose of COVID vaccine. The Biden administration has set a goal of ensuring that 70% of the eligible population should receive at least 1 dose by July 4th. So how is that going? And particularly in a broader range of communities in the US. So just this past week, Kaiser Family Foundation estimated that if the current pace of vaccination continues for COVID vaccines in the US, Hispanic Americans could reach a 70% threshold by late July, so be slightly after that July 4th target. African Americans would reach a 70% threshold if the pace continues, as it has been, around the beginning of September. So a little bit longer for that community. Asian Americans have already reached that 70% threshold. And then white Americans are also lagging a bit behind and might not reach that threshold until August. What we're doing is continuing to work very closely with the federal government on all of our schedules as far as manufacturing. And what we want to do is make sure the doses are there and that Americans can receive both doses on time. I'd also like to note that as everyone has seen that the US is getting vaccinated, there's also been a concern about outside the US. Are we doing enough to get doses to countries where there really is significant COVID risk? So what we're doing and making as a priority is contributing to the vaccine supply to the global effort to reach individuals in developing nations. At this time, we've committed to provide 2 billion doses to low and middle income countries in 2021 and 2022. And that includes 500 million doses that we have donated via the US government to what's called the COVAX facility, as well as African Union nations. And what this allows is then that facility decides across all of these countries where they're really seeing a very, very tough impact from COVID to be able to get those doses quickly and in a prioritized way. So I just wanted to touch on something where it was something we've been working really hard on to create flexibilities. So that's around our vaccine needing to be stored at very cold temperatures initially to stay viable. So there are several options for effective storage for our vaccine, and we actually worked hard on this with the US government, with the states, for several months ahead of distribution to be able to refine this approach, to determine how could we be a really good partner. One of the updates we made this year, that was just a couple months ago, was to allow 2 weeks of storage at just standard freezer temperature. So that means in addition to where it can be stored in ultra cold, we expanded flexibility. So in a pharmacy, in a location where they don't have those ultra cold freezers, there was this expanded capability to put the vaccine in a standard freezer for a longer period of time. And last month, we also got FDA approval to expand up to 1 month the storage of our vaccine at standard refrigerator temperature. This would allow the ability of providers, pediatric providers in smaller practices to store a vaccine, as well as, again, pharmacy, other places where they might not have the ultra cold, but they have more flexibility now to be able to store the vaccine for a longer period of time. We're also introducing smaller packages, and I think our hope is that this helps healthcare providers to manage our vaccine, and we can reach more underserved, rural, and other harder to reach communities. And then our goal is to continue to improve this, to be as transparent as possible about our supply efforts, and make sure that we're doing what we can to reach the remaining people across the US who aren't yet vaccinated. So let me touch on vaccine confidence. I think what we've realized is, of course, the vaccine can only be effective if people are willing to take it. It's not the vaccines alone that will help us end the pandemic, but vaccination by individuals from all walks of life. To that end, we've worked hard to be as transparent as possible in developing the vaccine, and we'll continue to do that. To continue to help build confidence in this new vaccine, we're working across the country with community leaders, advocacy organizations, policymakers, and other public health leaders to share information on the vaccine, the regulatory process, and clinical trial diversity. Having a clear and well-supported public education effort is critical. We believe that we can play a role at Pfizer to help educate the public, particularly in multicultural communities, on the importance of getting vaccinated, as well as the safety and regulatory processes that we've undergone that are part of developing these vaccines. I think it should be a collaborative effort where we're working with partners in industry, patient organizations, government, and other public health institutions to share expertise and build materials to develop the information needed. We're seeing that messengers matter. Healthcare professionals continue to play an essential role in the success of any immunization program, as vaccinators and trusted sources of vaccine education and reassurance to patients and communities. We've also partnered with many community-based leaders across the country. This includes pastors and other faith-based leaders to join together in bringing updated, pertinent information to their communities. After this meeting, I'd be pleased to share some additional COVID-19 resource from several trusted public health partners. So in closing, before taking any questions, and I'm happy to do that, I just wanted to note that at Pfizer, we are so proud of our colleagues. They've worked tirelessly this past year to help advance a vaccine, given the urgent need from the pandemic. We're also grateful for the tremendous effort made by regulatory officials at the FDA, public health leaders at the CDC, and so many other partners at the federal and state levels to develop and implement vaccine distribution programs. We'd also like to thank all of the clinical trial participants in the US and around the world who've joined in this effort to help fight the pandemic. Thank you again for inviting me. Really pleased to be here, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you so much. It's Lisa Coen, Esquire, lots of information. I know we're not usually privy to the journey from the research and all of the moving parts and making it to us in the form of medication or just information. And so we appreciate a look into that background. Also, if you have questions for Lisa Coen, please go ahead and drop them into the chat box. I know that we did already have two, and I wrote them down and then I got excited about what you were saying, so I need to go back to them quickly. For those of you who are working to complete a survey, also, we will continue to allow you to do that. Where's my question here? Here is one of the questions for you, Ms. Lisa. If someone has had COVID-19, wouldn't they have things in their body to fight that in the future?
Absolutely. There are antibodies that people develop when they have COVID, but what the CDC has advised, and CDC has this fantastic resource, everyone. It's their clinical considerations for all COVID vaccines. And what they talk about is it doesn't hurt to get the vaccine. So yes, you will have antibodies, but if you're thinking about the vaccine and you want to consider that as well, that's absolutely possible. You talk to your healthcare provider, but again, there's great information on the CDC's clinical considerations resource on their website.
And did we mention the percentage of African Americans in the
yes,
message?
Yeah. Right. One of the things that another great resource, the Kaiser Family Foundation, has been continually monitoring vaccine rates. And as the Biden administration has looked for 70% of Americans to get their first shot by July 4th, the Kaiser is also tracking all of the different demographics. So for African Americans, they said they probably would reach that 70% threshold in August. So it's a little bit behind that July 4th target, but I think still very, very encouraging.
Okay, that's good news. Another question from our chat. If an adolescent who had COVID-19 took the first dose of the vaccine, suffered side effects similar to COVID-19 symptoms, which lasted for 2 weeks, should the second dose be taken?
So right now, what our EUA, so that emergency use authorization from FDA, suggests is that they should get 2 doses. And I think, again, if you look at the CDC clinical considerations, they're also recommending that. And on the side effects, what I would say is the key things that people pointed to in the clinical trials, it was some soreness on their arm, and then fatigue and headache. And it was very similar across the age spectrum. But I think that, talking to your doctor about that, also the CDC makes sure that they're tracking if people want to report those adverse events. So, all very important pieces of this as you consider that full course of vaccination.
Okay. And here's another one. In regards to the booster shot that was mentioned, if this person understood correctly, Pfizer is researching this information, but are the others like Moderna, J&J, are they also working on a booster for the other strands?
Yeah, all of the companies are looking at that. I think one of the pieces of the puzzle, because we all worked to make sure that there were vaccines as soon as possible, what the clinical trials have studied so far is we have 6 months of data on many of the trial participants, and that shows that there's really strong protection, over 90%, even after 6 months. But this whole idea of boosters is to try to be prepared if in fact that protection level would drop, and that we're studying all of the clinical trial participants for 2 years. So if that drops a bit, everyone wants to be ready. The FDA, the CDC, the companies, we want to be ready. So if people need a booster, that will be, we'll have done the tests, we'll be ready with doses. The government has already said that would be free. So it's just, kind of that piece of what we're learning over time as we continue to study this at the same time that we're trying to beat back COVID.
Got it. Okay. Immediately after taking my shots, I had weird trance-like dreams for about 2 weeks. Is that considered a side effect?
I think any kind of thing that you were experiencing would be considered a side effect, and you absolutely should report that. There's a system at CDC. The CDC also developed an app called VSafe, and this is a great way where they keep track of people and what some of those after effects were. But I think anything should be reported. Absolutely.
Okay. They are coming in for you, Miss Lisa. Where can I direct others to find information on obtaining vaccines for their younger children between the ages of 12 and 18?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So again, please look at the CDC website, this clinical considerations for COVID vaccines, and then the Academy of Physicians for Pediatrics, AAP, also have fantastic resources on their website. And what I can do, Evelyn, is I can share some of these with the organizers, and then you guys could circulate these to everybody who joined your event today.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I think lastly, do you have a brief update related to the Delta mutant?
Yeah, so the Delta variant, this is the one from India. I think that's what it was initially talked about. And so what CDC is looking at from that disease perspective is how prevalent it is. And it's building in the US. I think the CDC director had said this week that they think it's about 10% of the cases right now. With respect to our vaccine, one of the things I'd mentioned is we're studying our vaccine against each variant. And what we've seen initially in our lab work, in real world data about this variant is that our vaccine does work against this. So encouraging, I think more and more information will come out, but I think that should be encouraging for people who are thinking about vaccination and then those who are vaccinated.
Okay, well, we so appreciate you taking the time to not only share your wealth of information and what's happening with Pfizer, but also to answer those questions. And I know that everyone looks forward to the information that you'll share with the members of the foundation. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for your presentation. For you all who are participating and waiting, the survey has dropped. So you can certainly go ahead and fill that survey out. Remember, once again, and I'll keep saying it, please do that survey in its entirety. Make sure that your name is included as it is as you're signed in for your credit, for your CEUs. And